This time, I'm not the one you can break.
The stench of rotting lettuce and yesterday's dreams filled my nostrils as I dug through the dumpster behind Romano's Italian kitchen. My fingers, cracked and raw from the Chicago winter, wrapped around what looked like half a sandwich. Moldy bread, but protein was protein. "Oh my God, is that Michael Thompson?" The voice cut through the December air like a rusty knife. "The guy from those car commercials?" I froze, half buried in garbage, listening to the group of well-dressed 20-somethings stumble past on their way to whatever trendy bar was burning through their parents' money that night. No way, that loser. I heard his wife dumped him for some rich guy. Now look at him. What a pathetic joke. Their laughter echoed off the brick walls of the alley. Nothing like a gourmet meal of moldy bread and public humiliation to start your evening, right? 6 months ago, I was Michael Thompson, the face of Hamilton Luxury Cars television campaign. Drive your dreams, I'd say with that $1,000,000 smile, leaning against a Ferrari I couldn't afford. Now I was Michael Thompson, the guy who fought raccoons for dinner scraps. The transformation hadn't been gradual. One day I was married to Lena, living in our North Shore mansion, planning our 20th anniversary trip to Italy. The next day I was served divorce papers and watching my life explode across social media. Lena had been thorough. She documented every embarrassing moment of our marriage, every private vulnerability I'd shared, and turned it into viral content. Michael never really made it as an actor, she'd told Chicago Magazine. I supported his delusions for years, but eventually, you have to face reality. Some people are just meant to be failures. The interview had gone viral. #Michael Thompson fail became a trending topic. My commercial contracts evaporated overnight. Our mutual friends chose sides. Specifically, they chose the side with money and social status. I pulled myself out of the dumpster, clutching my prize of questionable sandwich meat. The December wind whipped through my torn jacket, a designer piece from better times that now served as my only protection against Chicago's brutal winter. My phone, a cracked piece of technology held together with duct tape, buzzed with another notification. Probably another meme featuring my face photoshopped onto various humiliating scenarios. Lena's new boyfriend, Chad Hamilton, owner of Hamilton Luxury Cars, had made it his personal mission to ensure my public humiliation remained fresh in everyone's minds. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd been the face of his business, and now he was using my downfall as entertainment. I shuffled toward the underpass where I'd been sleeping for the past month. The cardboard I'd arranged as a mattress was soggy from last night's snow, but it beat the concrete. As I settled in for another night of listening to traffic and fighting off hypothermia, a pair of expensive leather shoes appeared in my peripheral vision. Michael Thompson? I looked up to see a tall man in an impeccable black suit. He was maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of presence that screamed old money. In his hand was a leather briefcase that probably cost more than I'd made in my last year of commercial work. "Depends who's asking," I said, my voice hoarse from the cold. "If you're here to serve me more papers, I'm fresh out of things to lose." The man smiled, but it wasn't the condescending expression I'd grown accustomed to. "My name is Harrison Black. I represent the estate of your great-uncle, Edmund Thompson." "Never heard of him. That's not surprising. Your family had a falling out decades before you were born. But blood is blood, Mr. Thompson, and Edmund was very specific about his final wishes." I struggled to my feet, every joint protesting. "Look, if this is some kind of prank, I'm not in the mood. I've had enough humiliation to last several lifetimes." Mr. Black opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick envelope. "Your great-uncle passed away 3 weeks ago. He left you everything. A penthouse in Manhattan, a yacht, and approximately $47 million. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward, my mind struggling to process what he'd said. "That's impossible. People like me don't inherit millions. We inherit debt and disappointment." "There is one condition," Mr. Black continued, his expression growing serious. "You must help 100 people find their true purpose within 10 years. Fail to do so, and everything goes to charity." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline. When none came, I started laughing, a harsh, bitter sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "Right. And I suppose my first assignment is to save world hunger or achieve world peace." Mr. Black handed me a hotel key card and a sealed envelope. "Your first assignment is in that letter. I've arranged a room for you at the Palmer House. Clean yourself up, Mr. Thompson. Your new life begins tomorrow." He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Michael? Your uncle was very specific about one thing. Sometimes the people who need saving the most are the ones who destroyed us. After he disappeared into the night, I stood there holding the keycard like it might evaporate. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel. With nothing left to lose, I made my way to the Palmer house. The desk clerk looked at me like I was something that had crawled out of the sewer, which wasn't entirely inaccurate, but the keycard worked. The room was small but clean, with a bed that didn't smell like urine and a shower with actual hot water. I stood under the scalding spray for 20 minutes, watching months of grime and humiliation swirl down the drain. When I finally emerged, I caught sight of myself in the mirror. The man looking back was gaunt, hollow-eyed, with premature gray streaking through his brown hair. But underneath the damage, I could still see traces of the person I used to be. I sat on the bed and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a letter written in elegant handwriting. My dear great-nephew, if you're reading this, then you've hit bottom hard enough to bounce. Good. Soft men don't make for interesting stories, and our family has always been about interesting stories. Your first assignment is to save someone who destroyed you. I know it sounds impossible, but trust me, sometimes the only way to save someone is to destroy everything they've built on lies. The person you need to save is your ex-wife, Lena, your loving uncle, Edmund P.S. The account information is in the safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. I set the letter down with shaking hands. Save Lena? The woman who'd systematically destroyed my life, who was probably at that very moment laughing about my homelessness with her rich boyfriend? But then I thought about $47 million. I thought about the penthouse, the yacht, the power to turn the tables on everyone who'd kicked me when I was down. I opened the room's safe using my mother's birthday, a date Lena had never bothered to remember, and found account information, credit cards, and a thick stack of cash. Real money. Enough to change everything. As I lay in an actual bed for the first time in months, a plan began forming in my mind. If I had to save Lena to claim my inheritance, then I'd save her. I'd save her from her comfortable life, her smug boyfriend, and her delusions of superiority. I'd save her by destroying everything she'd built on the ruins of my life. The first thing I did with my newfound wealth was hire a private investigator, not some shadowy figure from a noir film, but a retired Chicago police detective named Frank Kowalski, who specialized in what he called social archaeology, digging up the buried truths that people preferred to keep hidden. Your ex-wife's been busy, Frank said, sliding a manila folder across the table of the downtown diner where we'd met. She's not just dating Chad Hamilton. She's been systematically working her way through Chicago's social elite, collecting secrets like baseball cards. I opened the folder and found photographs, financial records, and what appeared to be transcripts of recorded conversations. How did you get all this? People talk, especially rich people. They think their money makes them invisible, but it actually makes them more visible. Your wife's made a lot of enemies in the real estate world. The photographs were particularly interesting. Lena at various charity events, always with different men, always looking like she was collecting information rather than enjoying herself. But the most shocking photo showed her in what appeared to be an intimate conversation with Tina Russo, her supposed best friend and business partner. That was taken last week at the Metropolitan Club, Frank explained. Your ex-wife and Mrs. Russo have been meeting regularly, always in private, always intense conversations. My source says they're planning something big. I studied the photo more carefully. Lena and Tina were sitting close together, their body language suggesting a relationship that went far beyond friendship or business partnership. Define something big. Mrs. Russo's been quietly buying up properties that your ex-wife has been devaluing through her real estate connections. It's a complex scheme, but essentially they're manipulating the market to make themselves rich and their competitors poor. The pieces were starting to fall into place. Lena hadn't just destroyed my life for Chad Hamilton's money. She'd destroyed it as part of a larger scheme to consolidate power in Chicago's real estate market. I'd been collateral damage in a much bigger game. There's more, Frank said, pulling out another set of photographs. Chad Hamilton isn't the golden boy he pretends to be. He's got gambling debts, tax problems, and a very expensive white powder habit. Your ex-wife is basically using him as a front while she and Russo build their empire. I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. The plan that had been forming in my mind suddenly became much more complex and much more satisfying. Frank, I need you to do something for me. I need you to make sure Chad Hamilton knows that his girlfriend is cheating on him with her best friend. You want to break them up? I want to start a war. The next phase of my plan required a more public approach. I'd been living like a ghost for months, but it was time to remind Chicago that Michael Thompson was still alive. I started with social media. Using my newfound resources, I hired a digital marketing firm to rehabilitate my online presence. Instead of trying to hide from the memes and mockery, I embraced them. I created a series of videos titled Homeless to Hopeful, documenting my rise from the streets. The videos went viral for all the right reasons. Suddenly, I wasn't Michael Thompson the failure. I was Michael Thompson the comeback story. The same people who'd mocked me 6 months ago were now sharing my content and calling me inspirational. But the real masterstroke was the charity event. I organized a fundraiser for Chicago's homeless population, leveraging my newfound social media presence and my uncle's money to create an event that no one in Chicago's social elite could afford to miss. The venue was the ballroom at the Palmer House, the same hotel where I'd spent my first night after meeting Mr. Black. The guest list was carefully curated. Lena and Chad would be there, of course, along with Tina Russo and all the friends who'd abandoned me during my downfall. But they wouldn't be there as honored guests. They'd be there as entertainment. The night of the event, I stood in my penthouse apartment. Yes, Mr. Black had been true to his word about the Manhattan property, adjusting my tie and admiring the view of Central Park. The man in the mirror bore little resemblance to the broken creature who'd been digging through garbage just weeks ago. I was clean-shaven, well-dressed, and most importantly, I was armed with information. My phone buzzed with a text from Frank. Everything's in place. Chad received the photos an hour ago. He's already called Lena 3 times. Perfect. I arrived at the Palmer House to find the ballroom buzzing with Chicago's most influential people. The charity aspect was real. I'd already donated $500,000 to local homeless shelters, but tonight was about more than charity. Tonight was about justice. Lena was holding court near the bar, resplendent in a dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. She was laughing at something Chad was saying, but I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes kept scanning the room. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't know what. Chad, meanwhile, looked like a man on the edge. His face was flushed, his movements jerky, and he was drinking too much too fast. Frank's photographs had clearly had their intended effect. Michael Thompson. I turned to find Tina Russo approaching, her smile as sharp as a blade. I have to admit, I'm impressed. When Lena told me you were living under a bridge, I assumed you'd have the decency to stay there. Tina, always a pleasure. How's the real estate business? Still manipulating property values for fun and profit? Her smile faltered slightly. I have no idea what you're talking about. Of course you don't, just like you have no idea about the photos Frank Kowalski took of you and Lena at the Metropolitan Club last week. The color drained from her face. You're bluffing. I pulled out my phone and showed her one of the photos. Am I? Before she could respond, a commotion erupted near the bar. Chad's voice, loud and slurred, cut through the ambient conversation. How long, Lena? How long have you been screwing your business partner behind my back? The ballroom fell silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the bar where Chad was confronting Lena, his face red with alcohol and rage. Chad, you're drunk, Lena said, her voice tight with controlled panic. We should discuss this at home. Home? You mean the home I'm paying for while you're busy building your little real estate empire with your girlfriend? He threw his drink in her face. The amber liquid splashed across her expensive dress, and the room erupted in shocked gasps and frantic whispers. Security moved in quickly, escorting Chad out while Lena stood there dripping with whiskey and humiliation. But I wasn't done yet. I made my way to the small stage where the evening speakers were supposed to address the crowd. The microphone was already live, and the room's attention was focused on the drama that had just unfolded. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system. I know you're all a bit shaken by that unfortunate outburst, but I think it's important that we address the elephant in the room. All eyes were on me now, including Lena's. She was trying to clean the whiskey off her dress, but she'd stopped moving when I started speaking. 6 months ago, I was where many of our city's homeless population find themselves, alone, abandoned by friends, and destroyed by people I trusted. Tonight, we're here to raise money for those less fortunate, but I think it's also important that we talk about the different kinds of homelessness. I paused, letting the words sink in. There's the homelessness of not having a roof over your head, but there's also the homelessness of not having integrity, not having loyalty, not having the basic human decency to treat others with respect. Some of you in this room tonight are homeless in ways that no amount of money can fix. Lena was staring at me now, her face pale except for 2 bright spots of color on her cheeks. But here's the beautiful thing about rock bottom, I continued. It gives you a solid foundation to build on. And sometimes, when you're building your new life, you discover that the people who destroyed your old one were actually doing you a favor. I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. So, thank you, Lena. Thank you for showing me who my real friends were. Thank you for teaching me that some people are only loyal to money and status. And thank you for proving that sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is losing everything he thought mattered. The room was dead silent. Lena's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no sound was coming out. Now, I said, my voice returning to its normal, cheerful tone, let's raise some money for people who deserve our help. The applause was thunderous. As I stepped down from the stage, I could see Lena pushing through the crowd toward the exit, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. Tina was right behind her, trying to catch up. But the evening's entertainment wasn't over yet. As the crowd began to disperse and the formal program wound down, I made my way to the hotel's parking garage. I'd had Frank position himself there with a camera, and I wanted to catch Lena's reaction when she discovered my final surprise. She was standing next to what used to be Chad's prized Ferrari, the same car I'd featured in dozens of commercials. But now it was decorated with something special, hundreds of photos of Lena and Tina in compromising positions, plastered across every surface of the vehicle. "You son of a witch!" she screamed when she saw me approaching. "You did this!" "Did what? I've been at a charity event all evening, surrounded by witnesses. You ruined everything. Chad's business, my reputation, everything we built." "You built it on lies, Lena. I just helped people see the truth." She lunged at me, her manicured nails aimed at my face, but I stepped aside easily. She stumbled, her high heels betraying her on the concrete floor. "This isn't over, Michael. I'll destroy you again, and this time I'll make sure you stay destroyed." "Good luck with that," I said, pulling out my phone. "By the way, this entire conversation is being live-streamed to my social media accounts. Say hello to your fans." The look of horror on her face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured over the past 6 months. As she and Tina fled the garage, I stood there admiring my handiwork. The Ferrari looked like a modern art installation titled The Wages of Betrayal. But this was just the beginning. I had $47 million, a growing social media following, and a list of everyone who'd kicked me when I was down. The real fun was just getting started. The fallout from the charity event was immediate and spectacular. By morning, #LenaGate was trending on social media, complete with photos of the whiskey-soaked confrontation and video clips of my speech. The Chicago Tribune ran a front-page story titled, "From Homeless to Heroic, Michael Thompson's Remarkable Comeback," while the gossip blogs had a field day dissecting Lena and Tina's relationship. Chad Hamilton's luxury car dealership was in freefall. The photos on his Ferrari had been shared thousands of times, and customers were canceling orders faster than his staff could process the paperwork. Within a week, he'd filed for bankruptcy. But I wasn't satisfied yet. According to my uncle's letter, I needed to save Lena, and that meant destroying everything she'd built on lies and manipulation. The charity event had been just the opening salvo. Frank Kowalski met me at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, his expression grim. "Your ex-wife's been busy since the charity event. She's hired a crisis management firm and a private investigator of her own. She's also been meeting with some very unsavory people." Define unsavory. The kind of people who solve problems with violence instead of lawyers. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with Chicago's weather. She's that desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. I'd watch your back if I were you. That afternoon, I was leaving my downtown office. Yes, I'd rented office space to legitimize my new consulting business, when a black SUV pulled up to the curb. 3 men in expensive suits got out, and their body language screamed professional intimidation. "Mr. Thompson?" The leader was a tall man with scarred knuckles and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "We'd like to have a word." "I'm sorry, but I don't have time for whatever you're selling." "We're not selling anything. We're buying. Specifically, we're buying your silence." I looked around the busy street, calculating my options. There were plenty of witnesses, but that might not matter if these men were as professional as they appeared. My silence about what? About Mrs. Thompson and Mrs. Russo's business arrangements? Our employer feels that your recent publicity campaign has been detrimental to their interests. And who exactly is your employer? The man's smile widened. Someone who values privacy above all else. Someone who's willing to pay handsomely for your discretion. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $5 million. That's just the down payment, he said. There's more where that came from, provided you agree to stop your social media activities and refrain from any further public statements about Mrs. Thompson or Mrs. Russo. I looked at the check, then at the three men, then back at the check. $5 million was a lot of money, even for someone who'd recently inherited $47 million. I appreciate the offer, I said, tearing the check in half, but I'm not for sale. The leader's expression didn't change, but I saw his hand move slightly toward his jacket. That's unfortunate, Mr. Thompson. Our employer doesn't like to be disappointed. Then your employer should have thought of that before getting involved with con artists and manipulators. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding but my stride steady. Behind me, I heard car doors slam and the SUV drive off. I'd just declared war on someone with enough money to hire professional intimidators, but I was past the point of backing down. That evening, I called an emergency meeting with my growing team. In addition to Frank, I'd hired a social media manager named Jessica, a former investigative journalist named David, and a lawyer named Sarah Chen, who specialized in corporate fraud cases. We need to accelerate our timeline, I told them, pacing around my penthouse living room. Lena's hired muscle, which means she's more desperate than I thought, but it also means she's made a mistake. What kind of mistake? Sarah asked. The kind that leaves a paper trail. Frank, I need you to find out who's backing Lena and Tina's operation. Someone with serious money is pulling their strings, and I want to know who. Jessica, I need you to start documenting everything. Every threat, every intimidation attempt, every shady business deal. We're going to expose this entire network. David, I need you to dig into the real estate manipulation scheme. If we can prove fraud, we can bring down everyone involved. Over the next 2 weeks, the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Frank discovered that Lena and Tina's mysterious backer was Vincent Carlucci, a businessman with suspected organized crime connections who'd been trying to corner Chicago's luxury real estate market for years. David found evidence of systematic property value manipulation, including bribes to city inspectors and threats to property owners who wouldn't sell. Jessica documented a pattern of intimidation and harassment targeting anyone who opposed Lena and Tina's business practices. But the most damaging evidence came from an unexpected source, Chad Hamilton. He showed up at my penthouse one evening, looking like he'd aged 10 years in the past month. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair was unkempt, and he smelled like he'd been living in a bottle. I want to make a deal, he said when I answered the door. I'm listening. I have recordings. Conversations between Lena and Tina, between Lena and Carlucci, between all of them planning how to destroy you and anyone else who got in their way. Why would you help me? I'm the one who destroyed your business. Chad laughed bitterly. You didn't destroy my business. They did. Lena convinced me to take out massive loans to expand. Then she and Tina manipulated the market to crash luxury car sales. They were planning to buy my dealership for pennies on the dollar after I went bankrupt. What do you want in return for the recordings? Protection. Carlucci's people have made it clear that I'm a liability. I need to disappear and I need money to do it. I studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Chad had never been particularly bright, but his fear seemed genuine. Give me the recordings first. If they're as damaging as you claim, we'll talk about protection. He handed me a flash drive. Everything's on there. 3 months of conversations, including Lena bragging about how she destroyed your life just to test her manipulation skills. That night, I sat in my study listening to hours of recorded conversations, Lena's voice, cold and calculating, discussing me like I was an insect she was dissecting. Michael was pathetically easy to destroy, she said in one recording. All I had to do was attack his ego and his sense of masculinity. Men are so predictable. In another conversation, she discussed her plans for Chad. He's useful for now, but once we own his business, he'll have an unfortunate accident. Carlucci's people are very good at making problems disappear. But the most damaging recording was a conversation between Lena and Carlucci himself, discussing their plans to expand their operation to other cities. Chicago is just the beginning, Carlucci's gravelly voice said. Once we perfect the model here, we'll roll it out nationwide. Real estate, construction, city planning, we'll control it all. What about the federal investigators? Lena asked. Let me worry about the feds. You just keep doing what you do best, destroying anyone who gets in our way. I had them. Everything I needed to bring down their entire operation was right there on Chad's flash drive. But I wasn't going to turn it over to the authorities just yet. First, I was going to use it to save Lena from herself. The next morning, I sent Lena a simple text message. We need to talk. Tonight, 8 p.m., Navy Pier, come alone. Her response was immediate. Go to heck. I sent her a short audio clip from one of the recordings, Carlucci discussing her unfortunate accident once she'd outlived her usefulness. Her second response took longer. I'll be there. Navy Pier at night in November was cold, windy, and nearly deserted. I stood at the end of the pier, looking out at Lake Michigan, when I heard her heels clicking on the wooden planks behind me. You son of a witch, she said by way of greeting. How did you get those recordings? Your boyfriend Chad isn't as loyal as you thought. Turns out people don't like being set up for homicide. She was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? I want to save you. Save me from what? I turned to face her. Even in the dim light, I could see that the past month had taken its toll. Her face was thinner, her eyes were hollow, and her usual perfect composure was cracking around the edges. From Vincent Carlucci, from Tina Russo, from yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. I know that Carlucci is planning to have you ended once you've served your purpose. I know that Tina has been skimming money from your joint accounts. And I know that you've gotten so deep into this mess that you can't see a way out. So what if I have? What's it to you? Believe it or not, Lena, I don't want to see you dead, destroyed, humiliated, and broke maybe, but not dead. How generous of you. Here's the deal. I'm going to give you 24 hours to disappear. Take whatever money you can access and get as far away from Chicago as possible. After that, I'm turning everything over to the FBI. And if I don't, then you'll be dead or in federal prison within a month. Your choice. She stared at me for a long moment, and for just an instant I saw a flash of the woman I'd married 20 years ago. Scared, vulnerable, human. Why? She asked quietly. After everything I did to you, why would you help me? Because my uncle's will requires me to save people. And whether you believe it or not, this is me saving you. From what? From becoming the kind of person who destroys lives for sport. From becoming the kind of person who partners with people capable of terrible harm. From becoming someone so empty inside that the only way you can feel powerful is by making others feel powerless. Tears were streaming down her face now, her mascara running in black rivulets. I can't, she whispered. I'm in too deep. Carlucci will end me if I run, and the FBI will arrest me if I stay. Not if you cooperate. I've already spoken to a federal prosecutor. They're willing to make a deal in exchange for your testimony against Carlucci. What kind of deal? Witness protection, a new identity, a new life, somewhere far away from all this. She was quiet for a long time, staring out at the dark water. What about Tina? What about her? Is she part of this deal? That depends. Are you willing to testify against her too? Lena's expression hardened. That witch has been stealing from me for months. She convinced me to trust Carlucci, knowing full well what kind of man he was. If anyone deserves to go down, it's her. Then we have a deal? She nodded slowly. We have a deal. As we walked back toward the parking area, Lena stopped suddenly. Michael? Yeah? I'm sorry for everything. I know that doesn't change anything, but I needed to say it. Why did you do it? Why did you destroy our marriage, my career, my life? She was quiet for so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Because I was empty inside, and hurting you made me feel full. Because I was scared of getting old and irrelevant, and tearing you down made me feel powerful. Because I'd forgotten how to be happy, so I decided to make sure you couldn't be happy either. And now? Now I remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. You're still trying to save people, even when they don't deserve it. 3 days later, Lena walked into the FBI field office in downtown Chicago and began telling her story. 2 days after that, Vincent Carlucci and 12 members of his organization were arrested in coordinated raids across the city. Tina Russo was arrested at O'Hare Airport, trying to board a flight to a non-extradition country with $2 million in cash. Chad Hamilton entered witness protection and disappeared into whatever new life the federal marshals had arranged for him. And I sat in my penthouse, reading the morning news coverage of what the media was calling the biggest organized crime bust in Chicago history, wondering if I'd actually saved Lena or just given her a more comfortable way to destroy herself. But according to my uncle's will, I'd completed my first assignment. 1 down, 99 to go. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. The caller ID showed Harrison Black's number. "Congratulations, Michael," his smooth voice said. "Your uncle would be proud." Is she really safe? As safe as anyone can be who spent the last year working with dangerous criminals and thieves. The federal marshals are very good at what they do. And the inheritance? Fully activated. You'll find that all accounts and properties are now accessible. But Michael, yeah? Your next assignment is going to be much harder. How much harder? This time you have to save yourself. The line went dead, leaving me staring out at the Chicago skyline and wondering what the heck that was supposed to mean. The answer to Harrison Black's cryptic comment came 3 weeks later in the form of a lawsuit. Apparently, Vincent Carlucci had friends in expensive suits who weren't happy about their business associate's arrest. They were claiming that I'd interfered with legitimate business operations and demanding $50 million in damages. It's a nuisance suit, my lawyer Sarah Chen explained during our meeting. They can't prove any of their claims, but they can tie up your assets in litigation for years. So what do? We fight. But Michael, there's something else you need to know. The lead attorney on their case is someone you know. She slid a legal document across the table. The signature at the bottom made my blood run cold. Jennifer Morrison, Esquire. Jennifer had been one of my closest friends during my marriage to Lena. She'd been the maid of honor at our wedding, the godmother to our daughter, and one of the first people to abandon me when my life fell apart. She's claiming you used illegal surveillance and harassment to destroy her client's legitimate business operations, Sarah continued. She's also filed a separate suit claiming you defamed her personally on social media. I thought back to my Homeless to Hopeful video series, where I'd mentioned friends who'd abandoned me during my darkest hour. I'd never named Jennifer specifically, but apparently she'd recognized herself in my descriptions. How much is she asking for? $20 million, plus a public apology and a promise to never mention her in any public forum again. The irony was perfect. In trying to save Lena, I'd created new enemies who were now threatening everything I'd rebuilt. It was like a hydra. Cut off one head, and 2 more appeared. But I wasn't the same broken man who'd been digging through dumpsters 6 months ago. I had resources now, and more importantly, I had nothing left to lose. Set up a meeting, I told Sarah. I want to talk to Jennifer face to face. That's not advisable. Anything you say could be used against you in court. Then make sure you're there to witness it. But I'm done letting other people control the narrative of my life. The meeting was arranged for the following week at Jennifer's law firm, a gleaming tower in the loop that screamed money and power. I arrived wearing my best suit and my most confident smile, with Sarah by my side, and Frank Kowalski trailing behind with a briefcase full of evidence. Jennifer's office was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, expensive art, and furniture that cost more than most people's cars. She was sitting behind a desk the size of a small aircraft carrier, looking every inch the successful attorney. "Hello, Michael," she said without standing. "You look better than the last time I saw you." "Funny thing about rock bottom, Jen. It's a great place to build a foundation. Let's skip the pleasantries. You've caused my clients significant financial damage with your reckless vigilante campaign. We're prepared to settle for $30 million and a public apology. Your clients were running a criminal enterprise that involved fraud, extortion, and conspiracy to commit homicide. I'd hardly call exposing them reckless vigilantism. That's not how a jury will see it. You used illegal surveillance, harassment, and public humiliation to destroy legitimate businesses. You're nothing but a bitter ex-husband who couldn't handle his wife's success." There it was. The real Jennifer. The one who'd always been there underneath the friendly facade. The one who'd probably been talking about me behind my back for years, even before my marriage fell apart. "Is that what you really think, that Lena was successful?" "More successful than you ever were. At least she didn't end up homeless and pathetic." Sarah put a warning hand on my arm, but I ignored it. This conversation was about more than lawsuits and settlements. This was about 20 years of friendship that had apparently been built on lies. "Tell me, Jen, when did you decide I wasn't worth your loyalty? Was it when the divorce papers were served? When I lost my commercial contracts? Or was it earlier than that?" "I don't know what you mean." Frank opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "These are phone records from the past 2 years," he said, placing them on Jennifer's desk. "Calls between you and Lena, calls between you and Vincent Carlucci's associates, calls between you and several journalists who wrote negative stories about Michael." Jennifer's face went pale. "Those are privileged communications." "Not the ones with journalists," Frank continued. "And not the ones where you were discussing non-legal matters, like how to destroy Michael's reputation, how to make sure he couldn't find work, how to isolate him from mutual friends." "You were part of it," I said, the pieces finally falling into place. "You weren't just Lena's friend, you were her accomplice." "That's ridiculous." Sarah opened her own briefcase and pulled out a digital recorder. "This is a conversation between you and Lena from 8 months ago," she said, pressing play. Jennifer's voice filled the room. "The key is to make sure no one wants to hire him. I've got contacts at all the major agencies. A few well-placed phone calls, and Michael Thompson will be unemployable." Lena's voice responded, "What about his friends? Some of them might try to help him." "Leave that to me. I'll make sure everyone knows that supporting Michael means choosing sides against you. Most people will choose money and status over loyalty." The recording continued for several more minutes, detailing a systematic campaign to destroy not just my career, but my entire social network. Jennifer had manipulated our friendship, using her knowledge of my relationships to turn people against me. "Where did you get that?" Jennifer asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Chad Hamilton wasn't the only one making recordings," Frank said. "Your friend Lena documented everything, including your conversations. She didn't trust anyone, not even her co-conspirators." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the busy street below. "You know what the funny thing is, Jen? I actually thought about you while I was living on the streets. I wondered if I'd been a bad friend, if I'd done something to make you turn against me. I blamed myself for losing your friendship. Michael, but you never were my friend, were you? You were just waiting for the right opportunity to prove you were better than me, more successful, more important, more worthy of respect." I turned back to face her. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your lawsuits. You're going to resign from representing Carlucci's associates. And you're going to issue a public statement admitting that you participated in a conspiracy to destroy my reputation. And if I don't, then I'll release all of these recordings to the Illinois State Bar Association, along with evidence that you've been taking money from organized crime figures to file frivolous lawsuits. How long do you think you'll keep your law license?" Jennifer looked at the evidence spread across her desk, then at Sarah's confident expression, then at Frank's satisfied smile. She was trapped, and she knew it. "You bastard," she said quietly. "No, Jen, I'm just someone who finally learned to fight back." 2 hours later, I was sitting in a downtown bar with Sarah and Frank, celebrating another victory. Jennifer had agreed to all our terms, and her withdrawal from the case would effectively end the lawsuits against me. "So what's next?" Sarah asked. "You've taken down your ex-wife, her business partner, her organized crime connections, and your former best friend. Anyone else on your revenge list?" "It was never about revenge," I said, though even as I spoke the words, I wondered if they were true. "It was about saving people from themselves." "Did you save them?" I thought about Lena in witness protection, starting over with a new identity and hopefully a new perspective on life. I thought about Chad, who'd finally stood up to those who hurt him and chosen to do the right thing. I thought about Jennifer, who'd just learned that betraying friends had consequences. I don't know, but I saved myself, and maybe that's enough. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Congratulations on completing your second assignment. Assignment 3 awaits. Check your email. HB." I opened my email to find a message from Harrison Black with a single attachment, a photograph of a young man who looked familiar, though I couldn't place him immediately. The email text was brief. "Your next assignment is to save someone who tried to save you. His name is Tommy Rodriguez. You met him under a bridge 6 months ago. He's dying, and he doesn't know it yet." The memory came flooding back. Tommy was the homeless veteran who'd shared his cardboard shelter with me during my first week on the streets. He'd given me half his sandwich and taught me which dumpsters had the best food. He'd been kind to me when kindness was a rare commodity. "I have to go," I told Sarah and Frank, standing up abruptly. "Where?" "To save someone who saved me." As I walked out of the bar and into the Chicago night, I realized that Harrison Black had been right. The hardest assignment wasn't saving my enemies. It was learning to save the people who mattered. But first, I had to find Tommy Rodriguez before it was too late. Finding Tommy Rodriguez took 3 days of searching Chicago's underbelly. Frank and I visited every shelter, soup kitchen, and homeless encampment in the city. Finally, a social worker at the Pacific Garden Mission remembered him. Tommy? Yeah, he was here last week, looked terrible, pale, skinny, coughing up blood. We tried to get him to go to the hospital, but he refused. Said he'd rather die with dignity than become a charity case. Where is he now? Probably back under the Wacker Drive Bridge. That's where he always goes when he wants to be left alone. I found him exactly where the social worker had predicted, huddled in a makeshift shelter constructed from shopping carts and tarps. He was barely recognizable. The man who'd shared his sandwich with me 6 months ago was now a skeleton wrapped in dirty clothes. Tommy? He looked up, with eyes that were too bright in his gaunt face. Michael? Jesus, look at you. You clean up nice. Tommy, you need medical attention. You're sick. I'm dying, he said matter-of-factly. Lung cancer. Been coughing up blood for 2 months now. Have you seen a doctor? Can't afford a doctor. Besides, what's the point? I'm 63 years old. I've been living on the streets for 8 years, and I don't have any family left. This is as good a place to die as any. I sat down on a crate next to his makeshift bed. Do you remember what you told me when I first showed up here? I told you a lot of things. You said that everyone deserves a chance to start over, no matter how far they've fallen. Tommy smiled weakly. Did I say that? Sounds like something I'd say. You saved my life, Tommy. You gave me food when you barely had any, shelter when you could have kept it for yourself, hope when I thought there wasn't any left. You would have done the same for me. Now I'm going to prove it. I pulled out my phone and called the best oncologist in Chicago, a man whose gambling debts I'd quietly paid off the week before. Dr. Marcus Webb owed me a favor, and I was about to collect. Dr. Webb, this is Michael Thompson. I need you to meet me at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in 1 hour. I'm bringing in a patient who needs immediate attention, and money is no object. Michael, I can't just... Doctor, remember that conversation we had about your gambling problem? The one where I paid off your debts to some very unpleasant people? This is me calling in that favor. There was a pause. I'll be there. Tommy tried to protest as I helped him to his feet, but he was too weak to resist effectively. I half-carried him to my car, ignoring his complaints about charity and dignity. This isn't charity, I told him as we drove toward the hospital. This is friendship. The next 6 hours were a blur of medical tests, consultations, and treatment plans. Tommy's cancer was advanced, but not terminal. With aggressive treatment, he had a good chance of survival. The treatment will be expensive, Dr. Webb warned me privately. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next year. Do whatever it takes. While Tommy was being admitted, I made another phone call, this one to Harrison Black. I found him, I said when he answered. But I don't understand how saving Tommy is supposed to save me. Don't you? Black's voice was amused. Michael, what did you learn from living on the streets? That people will kick you when you're down, but some will also help you up. And what did you learn from your revenge against Lena and her associates? That destroying your enemies doesn't fill the empty places inside you. So what do you think will fill those empty places? I looked through the hospital window at Tommy, who was being examined by a team of doctors and nurses. Despite his protests about charity, he looked relieved to be clean, warm, and cared for, helping people who can't help themselves. Exactly. Your uncle's will wasn't about saving 100 random people, Michael. It was about teaching you that the only way to save yourself is to save others. What about the money, the penthouse, the yacht? Tools. Means to an end. Your uncle was a wealthy man, but he died alone and bitter because he spent his life accumulating things instead of relationships. He didn't want you to make the same mistake. So the inheritance is yours to keep, regardless of whether you complete the 100 assignments. But you'll only be truly wealthy when you understand that money is just a tool for helping others. I hung up the phone and went back to Tommy's room. He was awake, looking better than he had in months thanks to IV fluids and pain medication. You didn't have to do this, he said. Yes, I did. You saved my life when I had nothing to offer you in return. Now I'm returning the favor. I'm not going to be able to pay you back. I'm not asking you to, but there is something I want from you. What's that? I want you to help me save other people. I've got money now, more than I know what to do with. I want to use it to help people like us. People who've fallen through the cracks, people who've been written off by society. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. You want me to help you give away your money? I want you to help me use it wisely. You know the streets better than anyone. You know who really needs help and who's just looking for a handout. You know which programs work and which ones are just feel-good nonsense for rich people's consciences. And in return, you get the best medical care money can buy, a warm place to live, and the chance to make a real difference in people's lives. Tommy smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him since I'd found him under the bridge. When do we start? Over the next 3 months, Tommy and I built something unprecedented, a foundation that actually worked. Instead of throwing money at existing charities, we created our own programs, staffed by people who'd lived the problems we were trying to solve. We opened a job training center run by formerly homeless people. We created a microloan program for people trying to get back on their feet. We bought a building and converted it into transitional housing with on-site medical and mental health services. But our biggest success was the mentorship program. We paired people who were struggling with people who'd overcome similar challenges. Tommy became our head of operations, using his street credibility and natural leadership skills to build trust with clients who'd been burned by the system too many times. The Chicago media took notice. From homeless to heroic to helpful, read the Tribune headline, Michael Thompson's third act. But the real validation came from the people we were helping. Like Maria Santos, a single mother who'd been living in her car until our housing program gave her a stable place to raise her kids. Like James Wilson, a veteran with PTSD who'd been unemployable until our job training program helped him start his own landscaping business. Like Tommy Rodriguez, who'd gone from dying alone under a bridge to running a foundation that was changing lives across Chicago. 6 months after finding Tommy, I was standing on the stage at the Palmer House, the same hotel where I'd spent my first night after meeting Harrison Black. But this time, I wasn't there for revenge or confrontation. I was there for the Foundation's first annual fundraising gala. The ballroom was packed with Chicago's elite, but these weren't the same people who'd mocked me or abandoned me during my downfall. These were people who'd been moved by our work, who wanted to be part of something bigger than themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the microphone, a year ago I was homeless, friendless, and hopeless. I thought my life was over, that I'd lost everything that mattered. I paused, looking out at the crowd. In the front row, I could see Tommy, clean-shaven and healthy, wearing his first tuxedo and grinning like a kid at Christmas. But I learned something during those dark months. I learned that losing everything you think you want is sometimes the only way to find everything you actually need. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I needed to learn humility. I needed to learn that my worth as a human being wasn't measured by my bank account or my social status. I needed to learn that the only way to fill the empty places inside yourself is to fill the empty places in someone else's life. I gestured toward Tommy. This man saved my life when I had nothing to offer him in return. He shared his food, his shelter, and his hope with a stranger who'd lost everything. He taught me that kindness isn't about having enough to give. It's about giving what you have, even when it's not enough. The applause was thunderous, but I held up my hand for silence. Tonight, we've raised over $2 million for the Thompson Rodriguez Foundation. That money will help hundreds of people get back on their feet, find jobs, rebuild their lives. But more importantly, it will help them remember that they're not alone, that someone believes in their ability to start over. I looked directly at the cameras that were broadcasting the event live. To everyone watching who's struggling, who's been knocked down, who thinks their story is over, it's not. Your next chapter is waiting to be written. And if you need help writing it, we're here. As I left the stage to another standing ovation, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete. Not because I'd gotten revenge on my enemies, not because I'd reclaimed my wealth and status, but because I'd found my purpose. My phone buzzed with a text from Harrison Black. Assignment completed, 97 to go. Your uncle would be proud. But for the first time since this journey began, I wasn't thinking about the assignments or the inheritance. I was thinking about Maria Santos's kids, who now had a stable home. I was thinking about James Wilson's landscaping business, which had just landed its first major contract. I was thinking about all the people we'd helped, and all the people we were going to help. I was thinking about Tommy Rodriguez, who'd gone from dying alone to living with purpose, And I was thinking about myself. Not the broken man who'd been digging through dumpsters a year ago, not the angry man who'd sought revenge against his enemies, but the man I was becoming. Someone who understood that the only way to save yourself is to save others. As the gala wound down and the guests began to leave, Tommy approached me with tears in his eyes. "You know what the best part is?" he said. "What's that?" "Tomorrow, we get to do it all over again." I smiled, putting my arm around the shoulder of the man who'd saved my life by teaching me how to save others. "Yeah," I said, "we do."